Craving Grace, Diamond Dogs, Book 2, Chapter 3. Written by Anne Malley. Narrated by Anne Malley. Copyright 2022. I'm not leaving without you. Get it together, Sykes. Gracie wedged a knee in the open elevator. Don't make me come and get you. She took aim and squeezed off a shot. The guard ducked. She aimed again, giving Jay a chance to run. Come on! But gunfire flew toward them. Jay scrambled inside the elevator. Gracie stabbed buttons. I told you to go, Jay snarled. You are not the boss of me. Who is? That's classified. Compartmentalized on a need-to-know basis only, she said. And you're not on the list. She searched her sequin hips, finding no place to holster her recently acquired Beretta. Jay snatched the gun from her hand and stuffed the barrel under his jacket. You're lucky I was there. I could say the same. She grimaced at the blood oozing from his thigh. You are not untouchable. Who said I was? Does that matter? She asked, knowing full well that it did matter, considering it had been her starry-eyed self. If only she was the Hulk, turning green, muscled, and able to stomp the diseased sensation searing her heart. Her one-time idol clutched her arm above the elbow, and she shuddered beneath a caring look she didn't want. Who are those people to you, Gracie? Who is this client? Tell me. I'm a private investigator working a dotted line to the FBI, she said with slow precision. That's all you need to know. Or Becky could have killed you. She drew stray hairs away from her mouth. That's my problem. It was her problem, too. Instead of squirming, she stared until Jay dropped his hold. Danny needed her to make good. His struggling family would benefit if the worst happened. The insurance policy she'd carried over from her short-lived military service would provide if she died. Not a windfall, but she'd tried. We need backup, she said. Ripping her earring out, she fumbled with the cuff design that housed a tiny camera. She blew into the sound portion, a mesh-centered poppy. You weren't in there alone, were you? You were there, so no, said Jay. Fine. Yes, Gracie was paranoid, but she could be wrong in assuming Jay was friendly with the owner of her new dress, or another operative with a deeper cover. You have a cell phone? I do, he said. Call the police. You don't want local law enforcement? Jay shrugged off her attempts to find his phone. Unless you want your operation blown? She said, I can do my job, and left it there. Strapped to a chair. Right. Zip it, Sykes. Gracie tapped her earpiece. She refused to fight him for his phone. We've got a man injured. We're at... What hotel is this? His brow shot up. The Nobu at Caesar's Palace. That bearded gorilla whose windpipe you crushed had me believing they'd driven me across state lines. Her brain was still woolly. I'm all right now, but you're lucky I didn't misfire and shoot you myself. She may still shoot him, if Jay kept gaping at her as if she were a kindergarten grad. Okay, I'll call, but police are likely on the way, he said. Prepare yourself. The elevator jerked to a halt. This isn't the parking level. Gracie licked her lips. No, it isn't, Jay said, so stay back. I'm asking. Better. But before Gracie could accommodate anyone, a fashionably dressed older woman carrying a tiny poodle entered the elevator. She frosted Gracie with a regal side-eye, then clutched her dog against designer silks. Nose wrinkling, she shifted a gleaming white Montclair bag away from Gracie. Gracie smiled and said, Did you get one of those yummy totes on sale? An annoyed, I have no need of sales, was the reply. Cute dog, Jay said. The poodle was all clenched teeth and attitude, but Gracie understood they needed to maintain in this lady's presence. The casino floor beyond the open doors was no safe zone. The woman turned to Jay, hovering by the control panel. Penthouse. We're headed down, Gracie said. Was I addressing you, miss? The woman confronted Jay. Push the button. The penthouse will override and I'm late. You can wait. And, oh my, you're bleeding. Horror replaced the woman's hauteur. Across the casino, a suited group marched toward the elevator. Gracie shouted, Get down, and shoved the lady and her dog to the floor. A shrill yelp mixed with rabid barking. Gracie couldn't say if the advancing group was hotel security, or the detail that had brought her to Jan Verbecky. But the danger was real either way. Come on, Jay grabbed Gracie's hand and cut left out of the elevator. She pulled him in the opposite direction. This way. You'll be rid of me soon enough, he said. No, we should head to Hell's Kitchen. Gracie squinted at the directional overhead. You can take the escalator down and melt into the crowd outside. Security is that way, and if you don't want to blow your cover. She had her bearings now. Jay didn't argue, but took the lead in the direction Gracie had chosen. He grabbed a slinky gold sweater from a bistro chair and thrust it Gracie's way. Together they sidestepped slow-moving guests. Gracie slipped on the maxi-length lace. It masked most of her dress. The length of her hair caught inside as she buttoned the collar. "Leave your hair tucked," Jay said. He took her hand and kept walking, laughing as if they'd shared some private joke. A lean young man in a plain black suit cupped his ear and studied them from a distance. Security, Gracie guessed. She and Jay weren't running, an obvious tell, but they walked faster than most. They just pinched a sweater, too. Was that what had caught the attention of the man in black? Whatever it was, stopping wasn't an option considering who was chasing them. Gracie glanced away, her heart racing. "Come here, you." Jay pulled her aside and kissed her, not too deeply, but with such a relaxed thoroughness, such... Gracie gasped for breath. Forget identifying particulars. With her spine suddenly against a wall, she stood, stunned. Jay stroked her cheek. His eyes darted left, then right. "Kiss me back," he said, when his gaze finally found hers. "We're putting on a show." Gracie was floored, not only at Jay's outrageous behavior, but the effect it had on the now beat-faced man who pretended he wasn't checking them out. Anger and embarrassment scrambled for the first place in a contest Gracie never wanted. The dual effect of Jay's aftershave and what appeared to be lipstick on his collar shook her to the bone. Thankfully, there was no sign of the man who'd given chase. Not yet. But she didn't need Mr. Voyeur to think that she was in trouble. "Come on, kiss me," Jay prompted. "It's nothing personal." "As if," she grumbled, then did as he requested. Eyes wide, she treated Jay like the imaginary target in a sting operation. "Nothing personal." He held her tighter, fingers digging into her waist. He palmed his shoulder, then tugged the wisps of hair teasing his collar. Okay, our friend is gone," Jay whispered against her mouth. "Nobody's watching you or checking for a man with an injured leg anymore." He nudged her, shoulder to shoulder, for emphasis. "Let's go." They couldn't go fast enough, by Gracie's estimation. Thugs or no thugs. She wrenched her hand, but Jay held her tight. He dodged a tanned old man swaggering like he owned the place, in a feathered cowboy hat and a spangled suit. Vegas headliners escaped her, but the milling train of hangers-on, autograph seekers, focused forward. The perfect camouflage. Gracie wished she could lose Jay and head out solo, but the meathead refused to let go of her hand. Glass storefronts and shiny signed restaurant bars whizzed by on the other side as the two picked up their pace. Finally, she breathed. She thanked God, but a new crew of suits and guns coalesced out of the bay of slot machines up ahead. Gracie recognized the bearded one, the short one who knifed Clive. "I've got you." Jay slipped sideways and into a room with no marker. Women in various stages of undress protested. A feather-headed Cleopatra stood up to confront them. "You can't be in here." "Cut a guy some slack. We can't be out there either," Jay said. "What happened to your leg?" Cleo demanded, her words spurring gasps. "Her boyfriend isn't too happy with me," Jay lied so seamlessly. He always had. "I'll say," a woman in a torque necklace agreed while Gracie died 1,000 times. Jay stopped, lifted Gracie's wrist, and checked the time. 5 minutes, he said. "Now," Cleopatra barked. "Chill, Cleo." A brunette in a gauzy white toga touched up peacock eyeshadow where she sat at a dressing table. "I didn't expect to see you again, Jay, and so soon," she said, then slipped a bronze chain slave bracelet around her wrist. "You know her?" Gracie couldn't help the gravel in her voice. "I know lots of people," Jay said. Gracie folded her arms. "Handy." "These two can go out the back. No harm, no foul. It's not a big deal." The woman stood to direct Jay and Gracie through a maze of light bulb vanities, then lockers. A super sweet cloud of competing perfumes made Gracie sick to her stomach. It was still empty except for a noxious roll of acid. She couldn't reach the door at the end of the corridor fast enough. What a nightmare. "It'll cost you more next time," the slave girl said as Gracie and Jay spilled onto the cement outside Caesar's. "I don't like splitting tips." "Tips?" Gracie spun. "Who is that woman?" "I don't know." "Sure. It's the truth," Jay said. "But I'm grateful, aren't you?" Gracie opened her mouth to answer when a paneled van pulled up. "Get in," Fitz hissed. "So you have nothing more to add?" FBI Special Agent in Charge, Antigone Tig Sanchez, 40-something, unflappable, interrogated Gracie from behind a mahogany desk. 50 was considered young to be the special agent in charge of any satellite office, yet here sat Tig owning every ounce of power granted to her, despite modest compensation. Sanchez's position was the equivalent of a director in the private sector, but what she lacked in pay, working for the Fed, she made up in her bearing. That's what Gracie wanted: bearing, status, and the respect she should have earned having risked her life overseas for love of country. She'd done the same only hours ago. Sunlight beamed through the window wall now. The glare made Gracie wince, much like what she sensed was coming since arriving at the FBI's West Lake Mead facility. "No," she said finally. Her overlong pause undermined credibility. That Sanchez had waited on Gracie's pitiful denial only emphasized the older woman's superiority. "How about involving the Caesar staff? Was that Mr. Sykes' idea?" "It wasn't mine." "All right then," Sanchez said. "You are off the case." Her deadpan pronouncement caught Gracie by the throat. "You're working my leads," Gracie argued. "Yes, and I thank you on behalf of a beleaguered Sin City. But you will be paid in full, no worries there, and the Bureau will handle matters from here." The decorated veteran sank into her cushioned chair while Gracie's blood drained. "Any residual domestic investigation of Jan Verbecki, Clive Harrison's ex, or Rana Capital will run you afoul of yours truly, and I don't take prisoners." "Verbecki tried to torture me. What is going to happen to him?" "Nothing. Contractually, all prosecution would come at the conclusion of the investigation. He is the offended party here, with a security staff who went overboard." "Overboard? I could have been shot." "Yes, but then your host and one of his female guests were assaulted by armed intruders." Gracie snorted. "Female guests?" "Right." "You forthcoming in your testimony?" Sanchez stroked her brow but gave no other sign of indecision. The topic was closed. "You insisted you had no FBI connection the entire time, didn't you?" I did. The FBI is free and clear." "I admitted no association." "Good," Tig said. "For you, maybe. What am I supposed to tell my client?" Gracie asked. She had expenses beyond the FBI payout. She had only one serious customer, the anonymous entity who had supplied the dirt on Clive's ex-wife. But Gracie needed more than money. Validation, for starters. Another sideline would spread the word that Gracie Snow was unreliable. "Tell your client that justice will prevail," Tig said. Gracie preferred to think of the woman on a first-name basis after being thrown off her own case. Deals they're not just for individuals. "That may be. Where you're concerned, however, if we discover you haven't done as instructed, you will be charged with obstruction of justice." Tig rose to her full 5 feet, nostrils flared, but she was composed despite Gracie's bait. "Do I make myself clear?" "Fitz headed things last night." Gracie may as well speak her piece. If she'd been on top of her end, she'd have someone watching the van. But no, an EMP device conveniently messed with my feed. "Electromagnetic pulse devices are used for just such purposes," Tig countered. "We use them too, but it wasn't an EMP after all. The van was clean. Thank goodness, otherwise this operation would be dead and buried." "Then how?" "Your pals must have a wide-range electronic jamming device. It's the only explanation that fits. They're easy enough to obtain." "Just my luck." "Knock it off, Gracie." Tig pursed her lips. "You're lucky you're not in the morgue or the hospital like those agents who were taken out around Hell's Kitchen. Could be facing assault charges too from—" Tig stopped and checked the file on her desk. "A Mrs. Dale Ostermeyer. Her Bichon Frise was terrorized as well." "I pushed her down to protect her," Gracie argued. "My point exactly. And Fitz is a solid agent. She did not plant those jamming devices, although she did access a snippet of audio." "You're lucky I didn't miss and shoot you myself?" Tig's heat-seeking missile eyes hit the mark. "Those were your words." "Yes," Gracie said. "I'm glad you admit to them. A good operative acknowledges mistakes. They also keep their primary mission a top priority at all times. I can't help doubting whether that's the case for you." Tig softened as she reached for a fresh blouse in the closet behind her. "I'm sorry." "You can't keep me from investigating." Glanced toward her computer screen. "I'm meeting the exec staff in 5 minutes. No, 2 minutes. And yes, I can keep you from investigating. You're getting a security detail, too, until this thing is over." "Please, no," Gracie groaned. She was motioned toward the door. "You're a smart woman," the SAC said. Efficient, resourceful, and eager, although proving yourself is a process. You don't want to burn this bridge. Maybe I should have a sit-down with your boss, Gracie said. Tell me you did not say that. Why, Gracie lamented. Because I'm more than able to run any and all entities who come through this office. That's what got me this job. Tig examined the fresh blouse, then returned it to the closet in favor of another one. Perhaps the FBI isn't the best fit for you. That one bad apple adage gets around. I'm good at my job. I never said you weren't good, but there are other agencies and other assignments. You don't want to miss out. Gracie shut her eyes a moment, then stared at Tig. Are you saying that you'll blackball me? She couldn't endure that again. I'm counseling you, Tig said. Take some time. You've earned it. Fitz is on the warpath about having last night's sting snafu'd, so I suggest you steer clear of that conflict. It's better for everyone. The older woman tucked her chin. Meanwhile, consider you've blown your cover with Rana Capital. Your personal safety isn't the only risk here. I'm more than qualified to continue in an analyst's role. That is my specialty. It had been personalities and portfolios when she was in the military. Listen, Tig said, my boss didn't want you involved in the first place. I went to bat for you when this whole thing started. Shock closed Gracie's throat, her tongue petrified. Don't look so stunned, Tig grinned. I read between the lines of your military record even before your Mr. Sykes pulled me aside late last night. Jay did not do that. Gracie lost track after they'd given their respective statements. Not everyone is out to get you, Gracie. And one woman to another, sometimes you do well to just say thank you and leave it at that. Gracie muttered thank you, then clammed her mouth shut. You're welcome, Tig said. You two made a fine team at Caesars. Miss Sanchez. Tig, please. No, the older woman responded. I told my boss I could count on you to keep your priorities in order. I expect you to help me now by doing that. Tig dipped into her private bathroom, then emerged looking quite fresh. Cracking this high-roller sting is my top job. A sharp rap preceded a rush of ambient noise from the hallway outside. They're waiting for you in the conference room. Fanny Johnson, Tig's efficient pantsuited secretary, stood waiting. She kept any sympathy under wraps when Gracie peered her direction. Fitz glanced over Fanny's shoulder. You coming, Tig? The SAC looked at Gracie. May we count on you? Can I count on you? Gracie was still asking herself if the FBI could count on her as she slipped out beside Fanny, avoiding Fitz altogether. She had offered Tig a gracious nod before leaving, and yet Gracie knew there was no way she could ride kitty car on this investigation. This case should have been her entree into the bureau, but no. A fresh pulse of anger consumed her. Jay pleading her case with Tig last night only spiked the storm. That was adding insult to injury. She did not want to imagine what he'd gone on about until the wee hours with Antigone Sanchez. Their childhood, Gracie's stubbornness, the goings-on in Iraq. Jay may have meant well, but the whole big brother routine is one that Gracie had outgrown. Tig would never countenance someone following her around like a crutch. Why should Gracie? She tore the snap badge off her collar, tossed it toward reception, and stomped to the elevator. Other agencies is where it was at. Somewhere she'd never have to partner with the likes of Jay Sykes again. Overbearing, out of line, she stabbed the shiny elevator button as if it were her brother's former best friend. In the flesh, stupid grin, dimpled chin, his ashen eyes, thick-lashed and heavy-lidded, could make a girl go jelly. In her mind, Jay Sykes was the perfect package to make a woman run, provided she had any sense. Most women didn't have sense in her experience. Sykes was likely down at Caesars making it up to the slave girl who'd helped them escape. Either that or she was making it up to him. Poor wounded Jay. The woman seemed all too eager to accommodate him, so long as she didn't have to split her tips, whatever that was supposed to mean. Gracie gagged on indignity. She was disgusted at the whole business, but that kiss grated. She refused to think about it, or her part in it. The elevator doors opened, thank goodness. But Sykes' smoky tones stroked her ears. His physical form assaulted her eyes. Gracie, don't. He shrugged. What? Please, just no. An explosion at FBI HQ wouldn't help anyone. I was only trying to help. He quirked chiseled lips, and Gracie prayed beneath a zing of unwanted awareness. I did exactly what you would do if our roles were reversed, he said. Don't kid yourself. Gracie rubbed her mouth, disgusted. Whether Jay was talking about that ad hoc smooching or his running interference with Tig didn't matter. If Jay wasn't Jay, she would never have spoken the fateful words that got her canned. If Jay wasn't Jay, he'd get out of her way, but history said he wouldn't budge. Fine. She sidestepped him, hopped onto the elevator, and planted a booted foot on his jean-clad posterior. A shove never felt so good. She almost wished she could have tagged him on his injured leg. It was only a flesh wound after all. She sulked a minute, then said, "Get out of this elevator and out of my life." She swiped her mouth one more time. "And do not turn up again." "You're threatening me?" "Take it however you'd like." She should have guessed that he'd make a stumble look cool. The amused headshake he gave as he turned around rattled her more than his kisses ever could. Heat steamed from her, from the inside out, just thinking about him, and he knew it. Jay had to know it. His non-response was his best weapon, one he had wielded with precision since she first discovered that she didn't hate boys. Gracie absolutely hated Jay's aftershave, whatever it was. "The bloodshed will be on you," she added, "if I catch you sniffing around me again." That should do it. He squared his shoulders and took a minute. Had the Almighty given him a chance to make nice with Gracie, only to have it end like that? With a kick in the pants? If so, that was one sick joke. Yet Jay had been the one to up the ante by kissing a ticking time bomb. The one with the hair trigger that could explode both of them. Stupid decision. Gracie hadn't blasted him about their lip lock, but that must be it. That must be part of what bothered her, considering she aimed to rub her mouth clean of her face. Sure, they could have thrown that undercover guy off at Caesar's by clamoring for an autograph. The idea was to appear nonchalant, not panicked like fugitives, but still. What a kiss. What skill. What was he thinking? Mouth dry, Jay blinked at the elevator doors, shiny metal firmly shut despite the wafting of lilac perfume. Maybe that's what spurred him to act first and not think at all. Gracie may be many things, but she was not the gangly little girl her father demanded he and Danny include in their exploits, and protect at all costs, if the boys wanted to hang out together. The clever setup left Gracie tended while providing her father a constant monitor about what Danny was up to. A single dad working to make ends meet had to do something. Memories tickled Jay's brain. They were all good. Old Sam Snow, not so old it seems, since Jay had passed 30, was a great man. He'd equipped his family with a firm sense of right and wrong, duty, and an immovable anchor of family loyalty. That last attracted Jay to the Snows, who'd weathered the abandonment of Gracie's mother with amazing dignity. Somehow the family suffered the blow while never allowing the woman or her memory to be vilified. Jay's folks had stayed together, the ties that bound them being purely monetary. Jay had everything growing up, but what did that even mean? There was no real glue, no beating heart. That seemed fine by his parents, who feigned ignorance on the subject of those rare instances Jay ventured to bring up the subject. But he'd given up trying. Jay needed the watchdog this time. He could have chosen differently at Caesar's. Hints of lilac called him out, much like Gracie did herself. If Jay didn't overrule the protect and defend mandate that had become his second nature, he may hunt down every guy who'd provided Gracie with the practice needed to kiss like a pro. Soft, confident, and fully engaged as to the power she wielded, his recollection of wide, knowing eyes and self-assured lips was not going anywhere. Neither was the overriding sense that some greater power had orchestrated their reunion. Whatever power, friends is what this second chance should begin and end with. Jay had ruined enough good things. He tossed a petition skyward, then let it lie. He still wasn't the praying sort, although the inclination hit him more often than not when Gracie was around. Down and dirty, Jay thought. The why behind Gracie's expulsion would be the perfect peace offering to her, provided that Jay could get the details. With luck and patience, maybe Gracie would let him help her more. He'd love to see her overcome whatever obstacles stalled her career. News of her recent display was sure to travel, but Jay would do whatever it took to set Gracie on track, the right one. He signed in as instructed, returned the clipboard to the desk's edge, and checked his ego. The agent's face bloomed red despite his firmed lips. This way. It's okay to laugh. Jay could be generous. I would laugh if I were you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't really. But if you don't mind, what did you do? The whole office is buzzing about your appearance at the Nobu. You saved Gracie Snow. You got her out of there. I did what any ops veteran would do. Yeah, I know. That's what I don't understand. Is she mad at you? Ask her. Jay drew some comfort from the man's bewildered bunch of brows. At least Gracie was an equal opportunity tornado. That's okay. I won't ask, the agent said. Don't ask, don't tell might be the better course. Smart man, Jay chuckled. The sting in his injured leg returned with a vengeance when a shrill scream filled the corridor. You son of a...